you appropriately, Bibiana. I know that you've been around TriMet as long as I've been around Metro, but if you haven't met Bibiana, she's the manager of mobility and location-based services with TriMet. She's a big face behind the open source trip planner, multimodal trip planner at Metro. She's expanded on it and built it and built upon it, I should say. And today, I believe she'll give us a little bit of insight on how she's kind of expanded it and what data she's using and some cool metrics behind it as well. So welcome, Bibiana.
Thank you. How's my audio?
I can hear you just fine.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you for the intro. And thank you for the invite. I'm excited to share some of the new developments that we've been working on over the last couple of years. And I'm sorry I was not able to get into Zoom directly. So Carol, if you wouldn't mind moving my slides forward. Okay, go ahead. Okay, so just as a little bit of a background, in my mind, mobility, moving people through the region, through the world, really started back in 2005 with our work with Google Transit and the development of the GTFS and the working with them really created the foundation for everything moving forward. And with that, you know, because of that common data standard, that's worldwide now. And then several years later, with the Metro RTO grant, we pulled developers together and developed the Open Trip Planner. It was the first open source multimodal trip planner. Google is not multimodal. Google will plan transit or biking or, you know, walking, but really chaining trips together is where the benefit is. And then that led us to 2017, the development of our Mobility as a Service app. And again, that was building on standards that had been developing and bringing in more than just biking and walking, bringing in ride shares, TNCs, making it more comprehensive. And there's more information at trimet.org/mod, and that leads us to today. So we took that next step with the IMI grant, and we're building out the platform. So next slide. So the MOS application, again, this was with the 2019-2022 grant to connect to transit with all shared use mobility modes. It's plan, book, and the payment is via deep linking, meaning it sends all the information over to Uber and you complete the trip by clicking the book button in the Uber app. Next slide. Yes, go ahead. I think I covered all of this. What it did was it also created a white label app. And the Mobility as a Service, the plan, book, and pay has actually been, the result of that was a white label app. And that white label app has been implemented by a lot of other transit agencies. Again, if you go to trimet.org/mod, we have just about everything you want, including a link to that white label app and a list of the other transit agencies that have implemented it. I might say that it's easily replicable because it's based on open standards and open data. And just the benefits of multimodal. I might add that the first time I actually used a prototype of this application, I had flown in late on a Sunday night with limited transit service. It would have taken me an hour and a half to get home, would have cost me about $35 with Uber. And I used the application, the extended OpenTrip Planner app, and it planned my trip with Uber and transit. It said, take Uber down to the first stop on the 75, and it kept my time and my cost for Uber down in half. And, you know, it was then that, you know, the big realization came that this is really beneficial for low income and seniors, and, you know, just bringing that benefit of accessibility to a broader audience that's affordable. So next slide. And that brings us to the IMI where we are today. And there's 3 parts to it. We're expanding the HOP Fast Pass. We have Sophia and her team has been working with PBOT on the transportation wallet. That's part of it. And we also have real-time arrival improvements, and then the smart mobility platform. Go ahead. So we've got quite a few partners that have been working with us and sharing data, including Uber and Waze. So it's been really great to work with them and to continue collaboration. So go ahead, next slide. And the first year was exploration, where we developed mobility performance metrics and use cases. Urban Logic was selected as a partner through an RFP process, and we're about halfway through the demonstration phase, where we've developed data pipelines, dashboards, and further drill down into the use cases. So go ahead. And the main purpose, the main objective of the Smart Mobility Platform, it's really a foundation for all mobility initiatives and technologies beyond just an application. It's to really manage and monitor how this huge ecosystem of not just transit, but every method of transportation that can be integrated in, including the infrastructure, to, again, better manage and assess, and really steady incentives too. Go ahead, next slide. So this is a very, very high level diagram of what's going on here. But in the bottom portion, this is processed and validated geospatial data. And again, it supports mobility analysis, new and emerging technologies and tools. So up in the upper left-hand corner, you'll see the multimodal trip planning app. We don't see that as the core of mobility management. We see that as a byproduct. We intentionally went out in the RFP to ensure that our application and this foundation was built on open architecture, open data, and open standards, not open source software, but open architecture to ensure replicability and plug and play. So there's a lot of service planning apps coming out, modeling tools. We have other applications in the agency, and the whole idea is to have that data in one place and have it validated in one place and be able to plug in new applications and new tools as they become available. So go ahead. A couple things. This is kind of part of the data. This is an example of some of the data sets that we have in there. Again, Uber, Lime, Waze data, the Metro Arliss data, the TriMet data. Historically, a lot of transit agencies, you know, they have the operational data sets, but this is bringing more information together, including our HOP Fast Pass. I think everyone's familiar with that. INRIX data, open weather, OpenStreetMap, which is our standard base map that supports routing, census infrastructure such as TSPs, et cetera, et cetera. And not only are we bringing this data in, a lot of it through pipelines, but we're also storing it, we're inferring it, we're blending it, so it's smarter than the sum of its parts. Go ahead, next slide. This is just an example. It's a web-based tool that is again laid on top of this platform so that you can visualize metrics. Go ahead, next slide. And again, going beyond just basic transit operations and NTD reporting. That's more specific to analyzing mobility throughout the region. Go ahead. I might mention machine learning. It's basically improving next arrival information. So we're bringing in time deviations, traffic data, and we're bringing this all together and we're monitoring the progress of it. So next slide. Some of the use cases that we're getting into with regards to the ODX analysis. I think everyone's familiar again with our hot fast pass, it's tap on only. And I think everyone realizes the advantage of really inferring and getting those travel patterns through the destination. Go ahead. Again, this is really providing us new insights, the origin and the destination, the model that Urban Logic built for us. And we're continuing to validate it. Next slide. And here's a use case that was used for our comprehensive service plan. Again, this was a demonstration use case as the data was in the early phase of validation, but it demonstrated a return on investment. Go ahead, next slide. So Grant O'Connell at TriMet, he used this, again, all of the data and the tools together to really better understand the travel patterns. And it resulted in really looking at combining two lines to better serve the underprivileged Collie neighborhood. Next slide. And then this is mode comparisons. Next slide. So we've been working with Lime and using the MDS data and then also the real-time data feeds. This is a really interesting example, but it's basically a query into the database, and it's querying where all of the Lime trips originated that ended in the Summer Park Rose Sumner transit stop. So it kind of shows the extent. This is high level. We're able to dig down further into the data. And this was very, very interesting. Next slide. And then in comparison, the same thing, but this is Uber. So where the Uber trips are originating and where they're arriving. Next slide. And then again, this is a demonstration of the last phase of the trip. This is just the opposite, where the transit trips are arriving and the extent to which people can travel throughout our region. So I might say too that this is early in the validation and in the analysis of the data, but we're really interested to study this more and to facilitate first mile and last mile legs. Next slide. And again, use cases are, emerging. It's interesting that people now are starting to see the data, they're starting to see the platform, and they're like, oh, we can use this for employer pass for honored citizens. So people are really beginning to see the value of it. And it's kind of difficult. I'm kind of the gatekeeper. No, nobody's getting the data until it's completely validated. But we're really excited to be working with everyone. Next slide. And this is use case trends in multimodal use. This is the last use case I'm going to be going over. Go ahead, next one. But this is trip planning requests over a 5-month time period. And at the top, you see transit-only trips. And at the bottom, you see transit plus Uber, Lime, and bike share requests. So we have there's a lot of tools and different UIs on top of our trip planning engine, but there's one engine, so we're able to study the requests coming into it. Next slide. And it's really interesting. This is looking at The requests over a 5-month time period. And you're able to see patterns in this. And we're also able to drill down. This is a higher level, but you see some of the patterns are parallel. Some of them are opposite. But because we have all of the information and data in there, you know, some of these spikes with transit, some of the spikes with Uber or car share, was there a service disruption at this time? What was the weather like? What was the traffic like? So we're able to study even further, having all this information in one platform to really begin to study and analyze behavior, and then also to influence and to encourage and to provide incentives and to monitor those incentives. Go ahead. And this is the last slide, but you know what we're beginning to see by bringing all this together, you know, better customer information, better decision making, and really to encourage seamless and affordable trip options. What we're also beginning to see is collaboration between business units. What we're seeing is bringing data together, you know, really brings people together as well. And one more slide, I think, just kind of looking into the future, you know, being able to visualize this ecosystem in real time and monitoring it. This can also be used for resilience planning and impacts on disruptions and accidents. How will it affect infrastructure? How will it affect service? So again, we're just now getting into it, and really excited about, you know, all of these emerging use cases and the potential. So thank you.
Thank you, Bibiana. Really, really interesting. And I concur as we get all these new data sources, and you know, it's super, I think it's super important for us to remember the visualization, as much visualization as we can provide of these big, huge data sets that inundate us.
Yes.
Oftentimes, you know, what's the old cliche, like paralysis of analysis or whatever. You know, you get these huge tables, and it's just hard to communicate effectively passing around huge tables. And so to the extent that we can visualize this stuff is super important to get buy-in and, you know, for collaboration purposes. So I totally get you on that. Really interesting about what TriMet is doing with first and last mile. I thought you've been doing it for some time now, but with the advent of Uber and car share and scooters, and you kind of touched on all those pieces. Really, really interesting. Bringing in all those different modes, but you know, I appreciated the managing and monitoring really of all the data that goes behind it. I can only imagine. My question for you is, have you been contacted by folks, I guess it would be transit agencies outside of Portland, to potentially you know, if they're trying to build a system like this, to, you know, is this applicable for other regions? I would imagine it would be, but is it transferable in any way? Or I'm just kind of curious if other regions nationally have seen this and, you know, been interested in implementing something like this.
Yes, it was really validation. Giving overviews and presentations of this, of where we are right now. A lot of people are interested. And that's exactly why this product had to be open architecture. And we're working with other transit agencies to not only test replicability like MBTA, but to also test interoperability, being able to plug in not just the dashboard and the metrics, but some of the planning tools, and Also, just the study of analysis is what I'm really interested in as well, as this is replicated throughout the country. Being able to really study analysis and how the trends differ from geography, transit agencies, from region to region. So we're really excited about that step moving forward.
Cool. Okay, looks like there's a question that just came in on the chat. Carol, do you want me to handle this, or would you like to move on this one?
You're doing a great job.
Okay, great. This comes from James.
Yes.
At DEQ. I use the multimodal tool every day. Nice. You have a built-in customer there, Bibiana. We at DEQ have let's see, have the tools, geocoding for our employee commute options web interface. Would you give me a hint as to how you pulled off the address entry tool? You know, it finds house addresses, but it also parks and schools in Portland.
Yes, we're really excited about it. We're using an open source geocoder. It's called Paleus. And we've actually just finished analysis, comparing it with about 5-6 other geocoders, including Google Transit. It even rivals Google Transit in several areas, but what it does is it's a point-based database. So all of the address points are in there. What it does beyond other transit agents, what's different about it from other geocoders is that if an address falls through, say it's in the middle of the block, 1450, it doesn't place it it doesn't interpolate in the center of the block. It does a smart interpolation where it uses the known addresses that are around it to better place it. So the placement of the addresses are superior. And not only that, but we have direct control over changing the addresses. So we actually load in our own data, our stops, our transit centers, our own specific points and points of interest, businesses. So we have more control over it. And this is especially important to support trip planning and multimodal trip planning, because for instance, you know, a mall, you don't want that point in the center of the mall. You want it at the entrances. So that's an example, but it's called the Paleus Geocoder. And there are support options for that as well. Software support options.
Okay. Let's see.
Yeah, I'm excited about that. I can talk.
Okay.
I just gave a presentation.
Yeah, I could
on
tell.
It, so
I could
sorry.
tell. That's good. That's good. I love the passion. Let's see. Let me go to Li Ming here real quick, and then I do want to get to Joe because he's coming to us from San Francisco. And let's see, Li Ming has a question. Have you considered contrasting the Oregon, I'm guessing this is the Oregon Transportation Plan or OTP requests against ridership hop tags to see where the latent demand for transit is, but probably not riding because of delay in access. Open Trip Planner. Thank you, Li Ming. So I butchered the question there. Sorry, Bibiana. I hope you can read Li Ming's question there and make sense of it.
I can't really read it,
Okay.
but what I will say is we're really early on in the use cases, and this is a great example of what planners are starting to do. Okay, we've got this data. Can we figure this out? Can we solve this problem? And that's a great example of what's going on right now.
Okay, so
thank you for that question. And I'm going to capture that question and bring it back to our group.
Okay, yeah. So it sounds like it's in the works. Let's see. Okay. Yeah, it looks like James is just thanking you for the Peleus link. So I think with that, thank you, Bibiana. Really, really cool, interesting work that you're doing, and look forward to, you know, after everything's validated and things are up and working, probably have you back and we'll see how things are going. Next,